It's the best day of the week, everybody. It is Friday. That means it's time for the Morning Pitt Mailbag. It means it's time for the end of the week, which we always appreciate and always love and look forward to. But it also means it's time for the Morning Pitt Mailbag. Oh, it also, like 52 weeks out of the year, I say, hey, it's Friday. It's the end of the week. We're all excited. But now we are in that point in the year where for 12 or 13 of these Fridays, not only is it the end of the week, not only is it the Morning Pitt Mailbag, but it's the day before a game. And so kind of extra bonus. It makes an extra good Friday because we've got the end of the week. We've got the Morning Pitt Mailbag, and we've got a football game to look forward to tomorrow. We've talked a lot about the Pitt Central Michigan game, kind of previewing that, getting ready for it. We've already discussed that at length. Today, we've got the Morning Pitt Mailbag, and we've got some great questions from people. One, they maybe get out the legal pad. There it is. Yeah, I don't know. You may or may not be able to see what all that scribbling is there, but it's the answer to one question. This is the links I will go to answer just one question in the Morning Pitt Mailbag. This is what I do for you, the Pitt fans and Panther-Lair subscribers. This is just for one question, Chris Gates. You make me do lots of research. But we got that question. Chris actually had a good question I think is interesting to dig into. A bunch of other good questions this week in the mailbag. Let's do it. Morning Pitt Mailbag Friday, September 5th. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Alrighty, Morning Pitt Mailbag, YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak, Panther-Lair.com website. Check all those things out. Like this video and subscribe. Let's jump into it. I don't really feel like wasting any time, but of course I have to because I closed the page that had the questions on it. Why would I do such a thing? All right, first question came in from Del Sardo, one-handed. Says, I thought this was the first game in a while where the special teams really asserted themselves and made an impact at multiple points in the game. Given how inconsistent Pitt's special teams have been in recent years, is this a sign of true improvement under the new staff or just a one-game flash against an FCS opponent? I guess the answer would be yes. I think there's multiple sides to that. I think there are a few things that were at play. We've talked about field position kind of all week. I think even dating back to the post-game show, we talked about special teams on Saturday night. And then throughout the week, we've talked about special teams. We've talked about field position, how Pitt had a 15-yard advantage in average starting field position. Their average starting field position was their own 43-yard line, which that's pretty good. If you can get your own 43 as your average starting field position, you're in really good shape. And Duquesne's was only about their own 28. So a huge advantage there. I mean, Duquesne was going to be at a disadvantage in this game to begin with, but you're spotting Pitt an average of 15 yards in field position every time. You're really putting yourself behind if you're Duquesne, and you're giving yourself a considerable advantage if you're Pitt. Like I've said, I don't want to take anything away from Desmond Reed's punt return. It was an electric play. I think Eli Holstein said after the game when he saw the punt, he knew right away Reed was going to score. I kind of felt the same way. It was a low punt, and it went back far enough that Reed was going to catch the ball and have plenty of time to work up a full head of steam and really get up to full speed, and it was going to be tough to get him down. And when I saw just the angle of the punt, the low height of the punt, and kind of how it was getting to Desmond Reed, I thought, this might happen again. He might return the first punt of the season for a touchdown again. I had that feeling too, and obviously that ended up happening. And then the rest of the way, it was a lot of bad punts, trying to punt away from Desmond Reed. Punts went out of bounds. Punts gave Pitt great field position. I think the punt, and then Kenny Johnson did well too, but again, not great punting out of Duquesne. I think the punt return game can be good. I think they've got good athletes. I do think there's a good scheme. I think Jacob Bernowski's done a good job. I think he's got them better on return units and coverage units than they were in the past. But I don't think it's going to be quite as easy as it was against Duquesne. I don't think. Because I think other teams are going to have better punters, and that's going to sort of change the equation. I do think Caleb Jonko looked really good. We were talking about this on the live show on Wednesday night that according to Pro Football Focus, his average hang time was 4.2 seconds, which seems pretty good to me. Not elite NFL level, but pretty good. And I also thought his punts just looked good. They were high. They had good hang time. They got good distance. And generally, it was it all sort of worked exactly the way it should. I think he punted 4 times. 2 of them were fair catches. There was only 1 return, and it only gained 4 yards. Like, that's a good day. If you punt 4 times and the other team gets a total of 4 yards out of it in terms of returns, I think the whole operation worked the way it should. And so I think that was really good. I think Pitt's punting was the strength, which, we kind of hyped that up a little bit. Was there a Caleb Junko hype train in training camp? I think a little bit. Jim and I talked about the punting. They're like, looks like he's punting really well. And I could hear comments from his teammates and the coaches. They all felt like Caleb Junko was punting at a pretty high level in training camp, and he seems to have carried it over. So I do think that can be a strength. I think the punt game looks good. The return game looks strong. And we'll see how the field goal unit comes together. I mean, Trey Bukowski's going to be put in some pressure situations with some tougher kicks than he had. I think they were both from 27 yards, and he made them, so that's good. He obviously had a little bit of an error on the low extra point attempt that got blocked. But overall, he made his 2 field goal attempts, right? And so if, he's going to be in higher pressure situations, he's going to be attempting longer field goals, and we'll see how he does there. But in terms of the things that I think they actually could prepare for and did prepare for, I think the return units look good, and I think Caleb Junko punted well. So I don't expect a punt and return touchdown every game, but I'm sticking with my prediction of Desmond Reed getting 2,000 all-purpose yards, and for that to happen, he's going to have more success in the punt return game, which I think will happen. Potter County native says, which true freshman plays the most snaps this Saturday? Now that you've given the easy answer in Sean Lee, who else sees significant playing time? Yeah, Sean Lee was sort of the easy, obvious answer there. If we go beyond him, I think there are a couple of guys we'll look at. We'll look at Josh Garrier. We'll see if Ja'Karian Turner's ready to play. If he's able to get on the field, those would probably be the top 2 guys. My guess is Garrier will be next in line in terms of snaps on offense and defense. Garrier will play a lot on special teams. He did against Duquesne. I think he'll continue to do so this week and beyond. But in terms of getting on the field on defense, I think Josh Garrier is probably the next most likely guy. What's going to be interesting to watch, and I think it's something to keep in mind when you're watching those safeties and how they deploy them and rotate them or don't. I think Garrier as a true freshman is probably pretty slated for that boundary safety spot. I don't want to say any position's easy or any position's harder than others, but I mean the free safety, the field safety position is probably one of the most challenging and demanding positions on this defense, along with maybe the star linebacker. And I don't think a true freshman is really going to play that role. Even like Jordan Whitehead played as a boundary safety, closer to the line of scrimmage, mostly coming up in run support and doing those kind of things. Paris Ford, when he had his great season in 2019, was playing as a boundary safety because he was still a young player, an inexperienced player. Cruz Brookins right now is working as the primary boundary safety. And where I think this is relevant for Garrier is, I asked Pat Narduzzi yesterday, is Cruz Brookins capable, at this point in his development, is he comfortable playing field and boundary? Because I think he only really played boundary safety in the Duquesne game. And Narduzzi said, yeah, he could play both. He could play field or boundary. But my guess is they want to keep him mostly on the boundary side until he gets a little bit older and a little bit more experienced. And if they do that, that kind of blocks the path for Josh Garrier. I think if Brookins was at the point where he was comfortable, I don't want to say capable, but comfortable playing field safety, and you could trust him with those responsibilities, with more experience and everything like that, then maybe they would slide him there and put Garrier on the field. I think Brookins might be their best safety right now. And so you don't want to take him off the field, but if he has to mostly stick at boundary safety, that's going to block Josh Garrier's playing time, if that makes sense. So, we'll see how they rotate them this week. Last week, it was pretty much Javon McIntyre and Cruz Brookins the whole first half, good portion of the third quarter before they brought in, Kavir Baines-Marquez and Josh Garrier to take those snaps at the end of the game, the last quarter and a half or so. We'll see if they go with a similar approach this week or if they rotate a little bit more in the base defense through the first half. But again, Cruz Brookins might block Josh Garrier for the time being. Ja'Karian Turner, it'd be good to see him get out there for his first action of the season. We saw Bryce Yates play a decent amount, but I'm guessing he'll be behind some of the other receivers. I mean, he was, no higher than maybe 6th on the receiver list, and that would probably bump down to 7 if you include if Sincere Lee gets back on the field here in the next couple games. So, Sean Lee, I think, is the obvious option right now. He looks like he's the 4th corner. We talked about that situation a little bit yesterday. Josh Garrier would be behind him, and then maybe Ja'Karian Turner if he's ready to play. We'll see what shakes out there, but that would be my guess. All right, Chris Gates had the question that maybe get out the legal pad. Says, despite Pitt's offense being based around the concept of play fast, score fast, it feels like we rarely score on our first or second drives of football games. Am I completely off on this, or has the offense under Cade Bell typically taken a drive or two to get going? Well, Chris, here it is. Do you just want to look at this and I don't have to talk? You can just, read all the drives. This is the first 3 drives of every game. Pitt's first 3 offensive drives of every game since Cade Bell came to Pitt. So the last 14 games, right? You probably didn't read all of that and you don't care. So I'll just give you the short version. You're not wrong. 14 games, Pitt has scored 2 touchdowns on their opening drive. In 14 games. 2 touchdowns, 1 field goal, 2 interceptions. They have as many opening drive interceptions as they have opening drive field goals. Eli Holstein threw a pick on the first drive of the Cincinnati game last year, and he threw a pick on the first drive of the Louisville game last year, if you recall. They've punted 9 times on 14 drives. They've gone 3 and out 6 times on game opening drives since Cade Bell arrived. So you're not wrong. First drive of the game, not a lot. Second drive of the game, they tend to do a lot better. They've scored 5 touchdowns on the second drive of the game in the last 14 games. They've also had 4 field goals. So they've scored 9 times in 14 games on their second drive of the game. And they haven't gone 3 and out once. They've only punted 4 times, no 3 and outs. The punts came on a 6-play drive, a 5-play drive, a 5-play drive, a 4-play drive. So they're not getting much more than a 3 and out, but they're not going 3 and out. Third drive of the game, they also have scored 5 touchdowns. They have 1 field goal and 1 field goal attempt, 1 interception, 5 punts, 1 turnover and downs, 4 3 and outs. So to your point, yes, they've only scored game-opening touchdowns twice under Cade Bell, and it was once against, one was Kent State and one was Youngstown State. So they haven't done it against a Power 4 opponent. They've only done it against one FBS opponent, and the rest of the time they've either punted or thrown an interception. So you're not wrong. Why is that? I don't know. I think there's a lot of reasons that could go into it. There was actually a reply to your post said, Anon6228239_scout said, I was actually thinking about this the other day. My assumption is that they have scripted the first drive or two, and that doesn't seem to be Cade Bell's strong suit. He seems to be better once he gets into the game and can call whatever he wants on the fly. I actually don't really, I think he said at one point he doesn't really script the first drive. Given the fact they've scored 2 touchdowns on 14 game-opening drives, maybe he should script the first drive. But you know what? I think, and this is anecdotally, offense or defense, I don't think Pitt starts games quickly. I feel like, I should have gone through and looked at every game to see if the other team scored on their first. But Duquesne, first play of the game, 17-yard run. I feel like this staff, particularly the defensive staff, I think the defensive staff is really good at making in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments. I think the offensive staff might be kind of good at that as well, if only because they're not very good on game-opening drives, but they seem to find success later. If you look at scores by quarters from last season, they scored 87 points in the first quarter and 78 in the third quarter. The second quarter, they scored 116 points. In the fourth quarter is actually Pitt's most productive quarter, 131 points scored in the fourth quarter last season. So, not great in the first quarter. They still outscored their opponents 87-77 in the first quarter. They got outscored in the third quarter 81-78, but the second quarter and fourth quarter they scored quite a bit. And actually, the fourth quarter, I'd have to go back and look at why this is or where this comes from. 131 points for Pitt in the fourth quarter last year, 64 points for Pitt's opponents in the fourth quarter. So Pitt more than doubled its opponent's fourth quarter scoring. I don't know if that was all the Youngstown State game and Kent State games or what it was, but interesting to see there. To your point, though, Chris, No, they don't score touchdowns very often in the on the first drive of the game. If they do it against Central Michigan tomorrow, it'll be the first time they've done so since the Youngstown State game last year when they drove 75 yards on 11 plays and scored a touchdown. So, play fast, score faster, except on the opening drive of the game. Let's see. PittFan88 says, what would Pitt need to show Saturday to make you feel more hopeful for the season? Or is it better just to wait to see how they look against West Virginia? Well, no matter what they do tomorrow, the West Virginia game will be the first real test, right? The first real indication of where they're at and how they are, how good they are, or where they're struggling or whatever. I mean, the biggest things you want to see though tomorrow is some of the things we've talked about all week. The run game. Like you don't want to have this. I keep saying it, like gains of like 1, -1, 2, 3, -2, 1, 67. It might end up averaging out to 8 yards per carry, but that's not the consistent run game that you need or that anybody would really want. You want to have those big runs, but you also want to be able to pick up chunks. 4-yard gains. That's a win on a running play, particularly a first down run. 4 yards is a win. That's what you want to be able to sort of do consistently, and that's where just looking at yards per carry falls short because it doesn't really account for how many of your runs were successful, how many of your runs were wins. And in the Youngstown who they played, Duquesne, in the Duquesne game, most of their runs were not wins. By running backs, at least. They had 18 rushing attempts by the running backs. 10 of them gained 3 yards or less. So you had 10 out of your 18 rushing attempts were losses. They were not wins. And so that's one thing you want to see. You want to see Eli Holstein pick up where he left off. Remember, I've said this stat a few times. He completed 9 out of his final 11 passes on Saturday against Duquesne for 178 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, you want to pick up from there. You're not going to go 9 of 11 for 178 and 3 touchdowns every 11 passes or something. But you want to pick up from there and not have the slow start that he had where he was like 6 of 12 for 35 yards. Like, you need to pick up with the strong play and move forward from there. Those are probably the biggest things. Obviously, I think with the defense, it's more about what you don't want to see. You don't want to see Central Michigan have success running the ball against Pitt. You don't want to see Central Michigan use its reputation as a run-heavy team to exploit Pitt's defense and take advantage with big passing plays. But really, it's those are the things you don't want to see from the defense. Offensively, what you want to see is that consistent, effective run game and strong, confident play from Eli Holstein. Picking apart a defense that might drop into coverage a lot. They blitzed, I think, Central Michigan blitzed like 25% against San Jose State. And dropped into coverage, and it worked. Like when they dropped into coverage, San Jose State's quarterback completed less than 50% of his passes and threw 2 interceptions. I'm guessing, given Eli Holstein's history and what his career stats look like, that's probably what they'll do against Holstein, is drop into coverage, make him try to pick them apart. One good way to get them out of that is to run the ball effectively. It all works together. But those are the things I would want to see the most. Those are the things I'd be looking for on Saturday. Steps in the right direction with the offense. Let's see. Jay Lazinger says, do you have any idea why we blitzed so much against a team that we got pressure on with 4 D linemen? Is it just because that's what we do and it was good to get game reps? Seemed unnecessary. Yeah, I was looking at the stats. It looked like Pitt blitzed about 37% of the time on Duquesne's starting quarterback. Probably more than they needed to. I thought they were getting effective pressure out of the front 4, but I think also I think there's a few reasons for it. One, that is what Pitt's defense is. It's an aggressive attacking defense, and so they want to get work. But, it's not the worst thing to put that on film and have other teams be worried about which linebacker is blitzing on every snap. Every obvious passing down, how many of those guys are coming. So much of that Delta defensive sub package is built on subterfuge, and confusion and like, hey, it looks like 6 are coming, but actually only 3 are coming. Hey, it looks like 4 are coming, but actually 6 are coming. Hey, it looks like 5, and it is 5, but it's not the 5 you thought. Like, watch those third downs. Watch how they line up. Watch how many guys show blitz. Watch how many guys actually rush. Sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes it's none of them. And I think that's that's partially why that package has been so effective over the years is the confusion and messing with what the quarterback and the offense are seeing and what they expect and all of that. And so, I don't think it's the worst thing to put it on tape that you're going to blitz a lot. Everybody knows you're going to blitz a lot, but I think, kind of a paralysis by analysis thing, information overload, put as many different blitzes as you can on tape so that offenses have to prepare for more. I don't think that's the worst thing to do. That would be I don't know, Pat Narduzzi may be like, are you an idiot? No, that's not why we did it. But I think that's an upside to putting a lot of blitzes on tape is now they got to prepare for more of those things. Is Kyle Lewis coming? Is Rasheem Biles coming? Is Braylon Lovelace coming? Is Javon McIntyre coming? Is a corner coming? Or is the DN going to drop out? Like, who knows what's happening here? That's good. That works into the defense's favor. And, of course, that shouldn't play in too much this weekend where Central Michigan is going to try and run a lot. Like we've talked about all week, though, you want to get them out of that by scoring, getting an early lead, getting ahead by a couple of scores, and force Central Michigan to pass, which should be in your advantage because it doesn't seem like that's what they want to do. And I'm guessing they won't be all that effective at it, not as effective as they are at running the ball. All right, great questions this week. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. I'll try and save a few and start with those next week. But we appreciate everybody who submits questions every week on the Morning Pitt Mailbag. It's always a lot of fun to do. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget, we'll have a live post-game show tomorrow after the game. Probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock is a good time to get started, good time to drink, and talk about Pitt football. What could be more fun than that? So make sure you like this video and subscribe. Turn on notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone when we go live tomorrow night. Thanks for watching the videos all week. I hope it's been a great week for you. Pack your raincoat tomorrow or your poncho or whatever it may be. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you on the post-game show tomorrow right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.